from an average person's perspective, if you don't have over $250,000 in the bank, and I don't, then you've got nothing to worry about. The government stands behind your money. You have nothing to worry about. It's the people who have more than that in fact do have to worry and are exposed. But even with this deal, as I understand it today, they're not exposed either because JP Morgan has agreed to take over the deposits. But for the average person, this has never been a problem, and it won't be going forward either. I think the real impact of this is going to come through the impact on mom and pop, but not because they're exposed to risk on their deposits, because they're not. I think it's going to be, you're going to see the mortgage market stay tighter than it otherwise might have. You're going to see the market for car loans, for credit cards. There's going to be generally tighter financial conditions for everybody, and that's going to affect the average person more than anything else we've talked about. So that's something I'm paying attention to. What does that mean for consumer confidence? What does that mean for retail spending? Those are going to be the real issues going forward. Part of it was the unease, certainly. Banks came under greater scrutiny because of their asset base, because of their deposit base. But what made First Republic particularly relevant is they didn't have the same asset base exposures as Silicon Valley Bank did, but nonetheless, they kind of specialized in the same market. They specialized in tech executives. They specialized in high service to wealthy people. So there's inherently a little bit more flight risk there. Second of all, part of the service they gave to those people were loans that were pretty generous in many respects, and that made their assets more vulnerable, even as the deposits were more risky. And so it wasn't as clear cut as with Silicon Valley Bank, but it was the same problem. And ultimately, it led to where we are today. One of the reasons this isn't a systemic crisis is because due to prior regulations coming out of the great financial crisis, in fact, banks have been forced to hold more capital. They're stronger financially, and they haven't been allowed to do things. So we're still getting the benefit of some of the stronger regulations. And the good thing about this kind of handful of failures is it makes future failures that much less likely. On balance, we got off lightly, but it's going to have very positive effects going forward. The real question for the Fed meeting is, what does the problems in the banking system mean for capital availability and for lending going forward? If anything, the First Republic failure is going to make banks even a little bit more gun shy, a little bit more determined to build up their capital base. That's going to tighten financial conditions. I think the Fed is going to raise rates a bit, but basically at this point, they're moving towards a wait and see perspective to see what the effects of the tightening of the banking system is. And I think that just makes them a little bit more willing to say, okay, this is going to have a real effect. In other words, this is going to make the bankers a little bit nervous. And from an inflation perspective, that's a good thing.